Alright everyone, so someone requested that I do a reading for Japan, so let's go ahead and get right into it. What I got when I tuned into Japan was immediately I saw a lot of corporate control of men in particular. Corporations, the people in charge of the corporations kind of working people to death. Not literally, but you know what I mean. And the image that I got was like a flower that's kind of slowly shriveling up and just kind of being used up to the point where it just shrivels up and almost just becomes dead. Um, so there's a lot of this like male power that's just completely relentless, and it was as if I saw like men sitting there in their chair and it's like they're kind of leaned back and they're watching other people work. This isn't necessarily men controlling women, this is more just like men controlling the general population at large. And it's like they're kind of watching people work, and it was like they were just relentless on making sure that people were doing things exactly how they're supposed to be doing them. So what I was getting with the shriveled up um, rose was this is kind of like the energy of the marketplace, the profits. Well, this is of the people, but it also affects the productivity of the people, which relates to the the wealthy upper class people making the money off of everyone else working for them. Um, so I was getting that around after like 20 years or so, and this is not an exact number, but the first thing that came to me was around 20 years, that these profits may kind of dry up, and these people in power may actually go to other countries looking for profit in other countries besides for Japan, and leave Japan. Um, So going into 2022, the year coming up here, what I got for Japan was there's like this spirit being oppressed, like people just kind of feel oppressed a little bit for the year coming up here. There's this sense of obedience, just like people must obey the authority. It seems to be a big theme here. Um, But at the same time, there is this sense of cooperation coming up for 2022 where people really help each other out. They work kind of as a unit, which is pretty cool. It's just the only problem is that it's like everybody's so passive about how they do things that it's like it's still like the system is controlled, so it's still oppressed, even though people are working together with lots of cooperation. So it's like a mix of both of those, good and bad. Um, and form fitting was a word that came to my mind, like kind of fitting things into the proper form. And male dominated as well was definitely showing up for 2022. I got that maybe around a third of the way through the year. There could be a female figure that speaks out about this, or it could just be that it might not just be one woman in particular. That's how I saw it, but that's could be just more symbolic of many women or just the culture in general becoming more aware of female needs and I guess you could call it equality. And so a lot of awareness on that coming up after this kind of like oppressed feeling of 2022. So what I was getting was social movements can form, um, but they're stifled with a lot of pain. So they're, they form up and it's almost like this movement is forming, but it's just like, it doesn't really work very well for the people involved. It just, the momentum dies out. However, there is like a small underground culture that emerges from this, and I wouldn't necessarily call it underground, but I would say it's, not on the surface of things, kind of behind the scenes. But the top-down regulation continues, and it kind of pushes this movement back out of existence for the most part, or like makes it more docile and obedient by the end of the year, by the end of 2022. So it kind of grows a little bit and gets frustrated, and this like black pain energy comes in and it kind of just stifles it, and then kind of just gets washed away, unfortunately. But I do see it as planting seeds for future growth within the country. And I see 2022 for Japan really being about the struggle for individuality, because it just seems like people are struggling to kind of, break their their barriers, their social barriers. It's really coming up for 2022 in particular. So I moved on to 2023 just to see what would happen. I was getting that the elite of the country, like the politicians or the corporate leaders, wealthy people who control things, in other words, they become more aware of the external world of global politics and corporations working globally, and just how things are shifting in the world, and they match to that change that's happening in the world. So people become a little less tight, and it's kind of like people start opening up to different possibilities. And I don't want to say Japan has like a closed off culture necessarily, but the way that I was getting it was that it's kind of like a closed off culture that's opening up to other things. So in 2024, I got that these powers that be, the elite, if you want to call them that, they incorporate external power that they kind of connected with networking more with other countries, with other corporations, with other cultures. They've learned to kind of connect more beyond Japan. I'm not saying they don't already, but it's becoming more of a thing. But what they're doing with that is they're actually using that to reinforce their power structure. So it's kind of like one step forward and then one step back. So it kind of leads further into the corporate control that they were about initially. So in 2025, what I'm getting is people begin to see things differently. It's almost like there's a party on some level. That's kind of how I was seeing it. It looked like people were partying and celebrating. And there's this second wave of change that comes over the elite, and it's like the suppressed behaviors that people had kind of go away, and people become more expressive in different ways. That what's taboo becomes less taboo. I did see potential increases in drug use around 2025, and the people in charge, they just kind of merge more with the changing world and the culture at large. I'm seeing the whole world going through a massive change during that time period, and so this is part of that playing out in Japan. It's just more of a sense of freedom, and it's kind of like a renaissance. That's really kind of what's going on worldwide. This kind of like a renaissance, a world renaissance. But 2025 is when I'm seeing that in Japan specifically. So 2026, I'm seeing technology connecting people more. I don't know what exactly this could be. This could be something just as simple as the metaverse, but I'm thinking it might be more like advanced technologies that we just don't even have available to the public yet. I'm also getting, because of this technology and yeah, because of the technology, there's less of a separation between countries, and it's like people are able to connect more somehow because of that. And the culture just becomes more free-flowing. So in 2027, this is where it kind of got weird for me. It was almost like everything just went silent, and it was like there was nothing there, and I was like, okay, what's that about? And then I got the sense that it could be that people move or migrate out of the country. I'm not sure exactly what this all is about, but I got the sense that it would leave kind of like a small town, simple lifestyle to the people who are there. Either it's possible that just lots of people decide to move out of the country, or that the major corporations move out of the country, or just certain parts of the culture just migrate somewhere else somehow. I'm not claiming to know the details of what this means, but this is just the general sense that I was getting for 2027. I was getting, it's possible that there's like a accident within the power structure, and the system kind of like defaults, and so the people who are in charge decide to leave and go somewhere else. Which I know I said earlier, the first thing I got was it could be like 20 years. So maybe 20 years is when something finalizes. Again, these are not entirely like cut and dry going to happen exactly at the timeline that I say. But regardless, I was getting this for 2027. Those who are left, though, continuing on their life like normal, I saw as being very happy, and it being a very content way of living. So it's not something to fear or get worried about. Moving on to 2028, I'm getting that other countries around Japan could experience a similar situation, possible economic struggles. I think that's a big factor of what this is that I'm seeing starting in 2027 is economic struggles on some level, potentially. But I think that this is more of a worldwide event. Not too devastating, but it could slow down the economic growth of large corporations and things of that nature. So going back to more of a simple lifestyle, or a simple economy, I guess you could say, seems to be the direction things are headed for those years. So moving on to 2029, I'm seeing groups of people taking the initiative to do things more on their own, such as regulating their culture, kind of creating a community, creating like a small little economy or town type thing. What I saw was like the country, and then it was like a little computer generated figure of someone like raising their hand. It was like blinking, as if it was like a person who was raising their hand, like hey, I'm here, hey, I'm here. And it looked like people reaching out to other people to form communities and connect in that way for 2029. And 2030, I was getting that there's more of like this new culture that takes form, but it's not so much like it's a new sci-fi type of culture. It's actually more based in the traditional culture of Japan, and it looks like Japan is really able to hold on to their culture throughout all of this, which is pretty cool. And they're able to embrace it again in the future in a, I think I could say, almost more pure form without the, I guess you could say, corporate control over everything going on. At least that's the way that I was reading it. So moving back to year 2022 coming up here in a month. It's December 5th right now. We're almost into 2022. So what I'm seeing for 2022 in particular is there's a potential for hardships of the general population. I'm getting there's a political nature to this potentially. Potentially protesting, but if there is protesting, it's going to be pretty short-lived, and it's almost like like a quick little blimp in the radar of people acting out and then like going back to their job and being obedient again. So it's not really anything too extreme, is the way that I was seeing it. For 2022, I was tuning into the country of Japan, and it's kind of like showing up as this blue energy, which is very much like kind of like calm, but also the sense of kind of being passive and just doing what you're supposed to be doing. And there's a lot of that type of energy coming up for 2022. For December, I figured I'd just read this month, which is actually 2021 still. But when I tuned into this month in particular for Japan, I got the color green, and I got the sense that I was kind of like people waking up to new ideas. There's a lot of activity going on, like people being inspired by things and taking action on things. Seems to be a good month for that at the beginning of the month, but towards the end of the month there's like this black energy that comes in, and it's like people's plans are canceled, and I was just seeing people like sitting there on the phone, and it was like they looked like they're like something bad, like it was like, oh bummer, like oh that's a bummer, that sort of thing. And I don't know why I kept seeing people on phones. Like, there's just some connection with people on phones in Japan. I just kept seeing that over and over throughout the reading. But also for the end of December, it's almost like people might be stuck at home, and so they have to, connect with each other over the phone, something like that. So ultimately, these are just, this is just what I interpret based off of what's coming to me. So I don't know if everything's going to happen exactly like this. So don't, base your life plans around some prediction that I made here, because it might not necessarily be exactly the way that I'm explaining it. Sometimes it could be as drastic as I'm saying. Sometimes it could be a little exaggerated the way that I'm explaining it. It might not be that big of a shift, or it could be like life-changing. I don't know. I'm not claiming to know. But regardless, this is what I'm getting. So take it with a grain of salt. Thank you for watching, and have a great day.